Ever since October 7th, our collective Jewish experience is simply not the same. Our lives are thoroughly different. Who could get up in the morning and go to shul without first looking at the news and seeing light to light, unfortunately? Who was lost in the battle during the course of the past 24 hours? Young soldiers with a yarmulke, without a yarmulke, with payas, without payas. Young Jewish lives, fathers, mothers, children, siblings. Our davening ends differently with the Kapitel Tehillim. There are more Mishaberachs that are being recited. The Shabbos table afternoon, lunch discussions are different. What did the Rosh Hashiva say? Was it something that we could be proud of or something that we could perhaps be less proud of or need to question? In Eretz Yisrael, suddenly people who one would have nothing whatsoever to do with, that individual becomes, understandably, correctly so, a hero. And the Charedim are mixing with the Chilonim, and they can't do enough for them, whether it's things that are brought to the front, tzedakahs that are given of enormous proportion that never were given before, earmarked specifically towards the land of Israel. People who have written songs to a portion of Klal Yisrael listen to, not nigunim, secular songs. But you hear that individual has come out against Israel. Well, we strike him from the list. You have the guitar that's been colored, that's been painted in the colors of the Palestinian flag. Jews who have produced plays about the Holocaust, yet who oppose what's going on in Gaza. Our foremost friend, the United States of America, that is the foremost friend of Israel and should ever continue to be. But at times putting a halt on what we could do to the degree that we have to defy them. And we have to explain to the world that if something occurred without our intention, claiming the lives of others, collateral damage, but we're quick to explain that we were supplied with that ammunition by the United States of America. Trump is on trial. And yet we're told that there were no frum Jews that could be part of the jury. And it was specifically orchestrated that indeed, at the various days of the trial itself, not continue as well to be on Friday so that they cannot be there. Suddenly becoming Jewish means that we have to question, where are our children at universities? Because lo aleinu, God forbid, of the protests that do unquestionably present not only anti-Semitism in the most horrific form and every shade of anti-Semitism, beginning with the students in protest and continuing up all the way to the seat of the presidents of those great universities. But it means that we have to question whether it's safe for Jews to be on those campuses. Nothing is the same. We read the news so much more. And people go to sleep at night looking at videos, things that are impossible to watch, impossible to see. But they explain exactly what heinous crimes occurred on October 7th. And there are people who feel that they need to see that in order to say effectively that Imcha anochi b'tzara, I feel your pain because we are one. Charedim will have signed up to not simply help out within the civil domain of Eretz Yisrael, but actually to enter the army. And those who have refused to do so. Israel has become the greatest unifier within the land of Israel, and yet at the same time, understandably, somewhat a divider between those who are part of the war effort and those who eschew being part of the war effort. And regarding the Umos Ha'olam, regarding the rest of the world, why we've been reminded so starkly in such unimaginary color that we are the nation that stands alone. And it is the rest of the world against Israel and against the Jewish nation, for we are one and inseparable, whether we live there or not. What's going on? Ribbon Shalom. What's going on? Listen to what the Rav Soloveitchik Sefer Tzaddik Levracha wrote regarding Parshas Bechukosai. That when we have the pasuk within the Torah itself, in which the Kodesh Baruch Hu says to us, that indeed there will come a time that you will be scattered across the face of the earth. Va'avadatem ba'goyim, and you will be lost amongst the nations. So here the Rav says, the very fact that Israel is isolated internationally, that the vast majority of Klal Yisrael is sympathetic towards her and ready to suffer all manner of charges against her by Jew haters, the fact that we identify with the state and see all who oppose it as Jew haters, is due to the sanctity of the patriarchs. Where the pasuk says, "V'zocharti esprisi Yaakov, v'af esprisi Yitzchak, v'af esprisi Abraham eskar, v'ha'aretz eskar," and I shall remember the covenant of Yaakov, and as well the covenant of Yitzchak, and the covenant of Abraham I will recall, and I will recall the land. Take away Eretz Yisrael, said the Rav, and the Jews of the diaspora will be engulfed by a tremendous wave of estrangement and assimilation. All the dramatic, tragic experience of the sanctity of the patriarchs, the existential difference of Jewish history would, far be it, be wiped out. And then he continues and says as follows: when you reach the stage of you will become lost among the nations, that you will be lost, as we've mentioned, within the nations themselves, va'avadatem ba'goyim, when you will be in turmoil, dumbfounded, afraid, when you no longer want to be recognized as Jewish, hiding like Jonah in the bowels of the ship, as so many in that holy city of Hollywood, California, have indeed professed, and elsewhere, when you will be frightened by the lot of Abraham, the Hebrew, of the patriarchal covenant, when we will be mentioned so greatly in the news, it will not avail you, in spite of all, to forget the ancient covenant. I will bring about something new that will always remind you of your Jewishness, that will exemplify the fact that you are different. I, God, will remember the patriarchal covenant so that you will be forced to remember it. The covenant of Abraham will boom forth from the radio. All the newspapers will point out the Jew, his particular problems, his stubbornness, as well as his cast iron determination. The Rav wasn't alive to see Gaza and our entry into Rafah. Continued the Rav, the shadow of Abraham, our father, will pursue you. Do you know how? And the Rav says, V'ha'aretz eskar, by Eretz Yisrael, and I will remember the land. October 7th, proclaimed to the nations of the world and to the nation of Israel, to ourselves, to all the Jews, from Jews and non-from alike, gotcha! Because Israel indeed is the great unifier of the Jewish people against the world, while simultaneously the great divider between ourselves and the rest of the world, and even l'davonenu l'tzarenu haraba, in certain ways, on certain levels, the divider is yet amongst the Jews in Eretz Yisrael, between those who serve and those who adamantly refuse to serve. It's not a simple thing. I don't suggest for a moment that it is. But we need to recognize that all of us as Jews are to be tethered to the bris between Hashem Yisparach and our avos. Ultimately, through our appreciation of, through our sacrifice for, through our support on behalf of the land of Israel. Ha'aretz eskar, not simply vis-a-vis Hamas, Yamach Shemam V'Zichram, and the Palestinians, not simply vis-a-vis the United Nations, that bastion of foolery and anti-Semitism, not simply vis-a-vis all the naysayers regarding the uniqueness of Israel as the sole seat of democracy and as the sole embodiment of appreciation for human life, human dignity, and what it means to be a Tzelem Elokim, but as well for the people of Israel. Mika Amcha Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz, with one land, one landscape, and one place in the world that we need to appreciate tethers us, not simply to the Torah HaKdosha, but ultimately to Hashem Yisborach. Have a good Shabbos.